Ladies and gentlemen, we're pleased to introduce your host for tonight's Fireside Chat. She's one of the top business journalists in the U.S. Please welcome Miss Evelyn Rusli from the Wall Street Journal.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So tonight we have a special treat. The next Fireside Chat with, as you know, the founders, the co-founders of Atlassian, and as well as the co-CEOs, Scott Farquhuar and Mike Cannon-Brookes. So they'll be out here in just a moment. We'll also be taking questions at the end of this chat. So if you can use Confluence, and the link should be above me soon, where you can type in your questions and also upvote the ones that you want us to ask. Great. So I guess we'll just get this started, and hopefully Scott and Mike can join us from backstage. Soon, maybe? Hi.
You need cool air.
And so before we get this interrogation going, I have a really serious question to start off with. Really, I need to know, what do you guys think about the Apple Watch? And what metal, leather strap combination are you going with?
I had the original computer watch, the Casio data bank. Did anyone have that? Yeah, okay. 50 addresses. Like every person I needed to know in year 5 would fit into that phone.
Weeks of battery life.
Weeks of battery life. Never had to charge it.
So does that mean you're getting the watch, or are you going to be like hipster cool and keep that one?
I think I'm probably going to get one. Let's face it. I think there's like 50 million people going to line up and buy one and then decide if it's any good. But I don't wear a watch since I got my iPhone, so I feel like it's a weird thing. Like it's going to have to be really good.
I don't really know anyone that wears a watch for the most part, at least not in Silicon Valley. So, then again, everyone loves everything Apple in Silicon Valley too, so we'll see how that goes. Now, I'm sure you guys did not come here to hear us talk about Apple, so let's get to it. Welcome back. Welcome back to San Francisco. Everyone knows probably that you have a huge office now in the Bay Area, but I also heard that it wasn't your first choice. So I'm curious about that, because when you think about tech these days, still Silicon Valley is considered the epicenter of tech, right, of global tech. So why were you hesitant to build an office in San Francisco, and then what made you decide to finally pull the trigger on that?
When we were small, just still in Australia, this is probably 7 or 8 years ago now, we realized that most of our customers were in the US. And we wanted to have a US office so we could do support without having to get up at 2 in the morning. And a lot of our customers were on the East Coast in New York, and we thought, great, let's open an office near those customers. Being young guys, we thought New York was a great party city to be in. And Mike and I took turns going back and forth. And for whatever reason, Mike got the months sort of from May through October, November, and I got the months sort of December, January, February. So I decided New York wasn't a really good place for us to have an office. And then we quickly moved it to the West Coast.
Got it. And so now that you're, in part, a large part of your whole global operations is based out here, how do you think that's changed the business, if it has? You guys were known as having a very particular culture that you created in Australia, and now you're also, a big part of you is Silicon Valley based.
Yeah, I think it's been really good for us. I mean, we have about a quarter of we've got about 1,000 people now, and about a quarter, I think, are in San Francisco-ish, 250 to 300. I think it's always done us really well to have, I always use the analogy that we have 1 foot outside the valley and 1 foot inside the valley, and that's really helpful because the inside foot gets the amazing kind of creativity and the bit of the froth and bubbles and just the kind of we're going to change the world attitude that exists here that's amazing. But at the same time, the foot outside the valley is a little more focused on customer problems and kind of real world things in a weird way. We don't focus on problems that exist between San Jose and San Francisco necessarily. And having the combination of those has done us really well, right? We kind of had the energy and drive from one side and then the pragmatism listening for customers on the other side. I think we have a really good balance between the two. I actually really like how we have it set up.
And what do you think are some of the drawbacks of being too Silicon Valley? I mean, what does that even mean today? I mean, it seems like you kind of implied by your answer that, maybe if you were all Silicon Valley, maybe you might have some challenges or you might run into some mistakes. But so I guess what did you mean by that?
It's hard. I mean, there's a lot of amazing companies being created here. There's a huge number of companies that are created outside Silicon Valley and then move here and are kind of credited as growing in Silicon Valley but grow outside, right? But I think, sometimes the problems that are being solved are not necessarily world-changing problems, or sometimes they are only problems that exist in certain areas. Now, sometimes that means they take off. Like Uber's a fascinating example. I don't know you could have started Uber in Sydney because we have a pretty good taxi system. I've never really had a problem, whereas in San Francisco, taxis were horrible, so I see why someone came up with that, and they kind of rolled forward and solved that problem, right? But there's a lot of other apps and things that you kind of raise your eye at and wonder why that made any money or raised any money and disappears in a few years' time. So
how many food delivery services do you need in Nebraska, to get food delivered to you at 10 p.m. at night when you're working back at your investment bank? Like, the markets for some of these things aren't very large.
Yeah, no. So I guess it seems like what you guys are saying is that if you're too Silicon Valley centric, maybe a problem is being too insular and not having, like you said, that foot outside of the market.
I think you get trapped in a little echo chamber that goes around with people talking to the same people and selling to the same people. And, I didn't forget we love Facebook. One of our board members is awesome. He's from Facebook. But I had a customer come to me at one point and say, stop telling me about Facebook. I don't build stuff like they build stuff. I have real world problems. And it was kind of a real wake-up call a few years ago. So actually, the problems that customer had in his bank, insurance company were very different to the problems that Facebook had. Now they're, and so we need to consider about solving both people's problems necessarily, not just, how do you deploy instantly all the time. That customer obviously wanted to get there, but he had a lot of steps to go to get there, and he had a different set of problems.
And even in your Australian office, what's interesting about your company is that you try to get engineers who didn't come from traditional technology companies. Even within Australia, is this idea of not being too focused on just tech and creating for the tech industry, right? I think correct me if I'm wrong.
In Australia, there's not a big technology industry.
Yeah.
When we started 12 years ago, we were sort of the only startup that either of us knew really that was building software. And so when we had to recruit people in Sydney, we couldn't find people that had done, huge amounts of software background or experience. So we found people in banks, insurance, telecommunications, consulting, whoever, whatever they'd done to write programming and programs, but they hadn't been to sell, they'd been internal. And so we can retrain those people to build great products in most cases. The thing we really couldn't find was great software marketing people. We had to come to Silicon Valley to find those people. And we're now transplanting some back, and we've actually moved people from Sydney that want that career over here, so back and forth. We have a lot of people that travel back and forth. I wish Qantas would reinstate the Sydney-San Francisco league, because we have to fly United each way all the time. But we have, software marketing is something that I think is uniquely Silicon Valley. That's very hard to find anywhere else in the world.
Are you guys consciously bucking trends? I mean, when I think about your company and I compare it to even a lot in the enterprise realm or, where you guys play, you guys do things very differently. This company is structured in a very, very interesting way. Just thinking about co-CEOs, how many times do you see that work in Silicon Valley? You think about the fact that you guys have been slow to IPO, the idea of no sales staff for many, many years. What have you guys learned from bucking trends, and is that something that you're consciously trying to do to be a little bit contrarian in building this business?
I think, we often get painted as that. I think it's funny. I would say 95% of the things we do are exactly like every other really good company. It's a few percent difference. It's a 4 or 5% difference, but that actually makes a massive difference at the end, right? I mean, but I don't think when you paint it as doing things differently, people think you do things differently for the sake of being different, like for the sake of being contrarian.
Yeah.
I would say that all we've done at almost every step, every big decision, is just think about the big decision, almost from first principles at each point, and sometimes that leads us down a slightly different path, which then reinforces itself. So, I mean, you talked about the business model as a good example, where in a lot of ways it was either our only option or a very sensible option. It made a lot of sense logically, so we did it, and then we've enhanced and enhanced and enhanced, and it's worked very well, right? But we didn't do it for the sake of being different. It was the logical choice that we had at the time, if that makes sense. It almost sounds like a boring answer, right? But Yeah, I don't think we revel in being different necessarily. We just try to make the sensible choice at each point along the way.
I don't know if you've ever seen Jeff Bezos speak, and he speaks as though, 14 years ago, he wrote on the back of a napkin everything that Amazon was going to do for the next 20 years. And you watch him on stage, you think, wow, that guy is incredibly smart. And I think for us, we didn't know anything. We come out of university, and we had absolutely no idea what we were doing. And when you do that, you sort of ask people, what's the traditional way of doing things? And if we understood it and could know why people would do it that way, we'd follow that. But if someone couldn't explain the traditional way of doing things, we go, well, that doesn't seem to make any sense. Let's try it some other way. And so our business model of no salespeople, traditionally we haven't had anyone that's been on a commission to, sell software, was because we couldn't afford it. And then once we could afford it, we realized that a lot of having salespeople is a slippery slope. Once salespeople get involved in a purchase, they want to hide information from the customers because they can make a sale by giving out bits of information. And so salespeople, there's nothing wrong with having salespeople, but it forces you down this method of hiding information from your customers. So I guess we happened to luck into something different, and then over time we sort of realized, okay, why did it work? Why has no salespeople work for us? What are we going to do different, and evolve the model over time?
On the point of salespeople, now you finally do have a sales staff.
Yeah, we have 7 now.
Albeit, very small. So when you went about building that, what did you think about, to avoid some of those issues that you typically have with a sales staff? And how did you get comfortable with that idea? I mean, you think about all the stories about your company for the last few years, and like within the first few graphs of any story, it talks about how this company is unique because of no sales staff. So now, how do you make that transition to beginning to have some in your organization?
Yeah, so we've never been really anti-sales in terms of kind of no salespeople. We've always been about pro-automation. And if you go back years and years ago, many of you are our customers, and when you renew our software, there's choices you can make. You can renew it on time, you can renew it late, never renew it. And most companies would have a person call every single customer to pursue the renewal. And we realized, okay, well, let's run an experiment. What happens if we call our customers, and what happens if we just send them an email and say, hey, if you want to renew, here's all the details, you can pay online. And by sending people an email, we got about a 70% renewal rate just by sending emails and letting people renew themselves. And so when we do have people chase up, the last 30%, they can have a meaningful conversation with people that, maybe have questions or want to understand the product, and have a meaningful conversation as opposed to just chasing people down because they were throwing humans at the problem. So I guess we've always just tried to take that, how do we automate stuff? Kind of being engineers, we want to not throw people at problems. And I guess that's the approach we've taken with salespeople. Even today with our 7 enterprise advocates, and these enterprise advocates, many of you are aware of, we have a data center product, so a highly scalable clustered version of Jira and soon to be other products. And at the price points, and it's a more educated sales process where customers want to know, okay, what does it do? How does it perform under these circumstances? Much more involved than buying something from the website. So we always knew we'd have to have people answering those questions. And so that's where we evolved into having the enterprise advocates. But even those, we run an A/B test now. Okay. We have a region where we have no enterprise advocates, and we're going to see how many people self-serve in that area.
I think it's important also what we haven't changed. It's been, the more fascinating question is, how has it been hiring a sales team as the non-sales team company? Because those first couple of guys and girls are extremely brave because they've taken on an interesting challenge. You could argue we've handcuffed them to stop, but I would say that we've put sensible rules in place to make sure that they don't abuse customers in any way. So for example, again, even with the data center products, the prices are online and the salespeople sell them at that price. That's it. Like, there is no discount, there is no hidden price, contact us, etc., for a reason, because the salespeople are supposed to be helping the customer determine if it fits their needs, rather than trying to get close as possible to list price and negotiating discounts, etc. Same with Eulers. We have one license agreement. Doesn't matter whether you buy a $10 starter license or whether you buy a $100,000 Jira cluster, it's the same thing.
Was there a special way that you guys recruited for this team, or things that you had to lay out from the beginning?
We've certainly looked for people who were willing to think differently about the sales process, I think. We've taken some of the traditional sales tools and technologies away from them, right, where they really should be empowering customers. That's their goal. We've given them long-term goals rather than short-term goals. The same thing, right? We've given them team goals instead of quarterly individual goals. So hopefully they think a lot more long-term about customer success than just how many dollars do I sell this quarter.
Do you have a cap where you think it should only be X% of the company? Like this, you don't plan to perhaps grow the sales staff to, do you have a limit? Because for so long you guys have been such, pretty much a non-existent sales team. So
well, it's 0.5% of the company now or something. So I don't think we have a fixed limit. No, and we've thought about it. It's whatever makes sense, right? Whatever is logical and I don't think we'll ever have very many, but there's certain cases where, especially with the larger customers, they keep investing in Atlassian infrastructure and they get to a certain point where they need someone to help them and sort out problems that they have and think about, what are they going to need in 2 years' time and things like that requires somebody on the end of the phone. So.
And a lot has changed besides the fact that you now have 7 salespeople. You look at the product lines, there's more than there ever has been before. You're catering to a more diversified group of people. So of all the changes that have happened between this conversation and last year's Fireside Chat, what do you think is kind of the most important, the most, at least that sticks out in your mind about how things are being run differently or how you guys do business differently?
The biggest thing for me over the last year is we've almost been sort of apologetic that teams beyond engineering and development teams use our products. So what we found is that people, generally technical people, start using our products, and it's really successful because for the first time they collaborate with the rest of their organization, rather than an email or terrible tools. They've got a great tool to do that. And then what we found was that great companies had then pulled that, and the entire organization was using it. In the marketing teams, HR, finance, all these companies were using it across their entire organization. And for a long time, we kind of said, no, that's not the right thing to do. Like, let's focus just on the technical teams. And I think over the last year, we've realized that actually, those teams deserve to be, catered to as well. Like, we can't just focus on some subset. We're really successful in all these other teams. So that's the biggest change you'll see over the coming years, is that we'll now not only serve developers, and in some ways we'll serve developers better by recognizing that their needs are different to a support team or different to the rest of the company.
And in terms of, scaling it to really take care of a more diverse group of customers, I think scaling is probably the toughest challenge for any startup or even mature startups. And you guys have added so much staff in the last recent years. Curious what you think are some of the most difficult parts of the scaling process, and maybe the pain points that you guys have faced.
I mean, it's definitely the people. I mean, the people aspect from all angles is the most
Finding
difficult part.
Finding the right people.
Finding them, getting them to understand the company, training them up quickly, not pushing them too hard, too fast, because that's often a problem. It takes people time to understand the company, the values, the culture. That's definitely the hardest part when you're trying to scale up really quickly. Finding them in different geographies, there's a lot of challenge around that. Love to hear feedback from you guys this week, next couple of days. So we have, I think, somewhere north of 250 Atlassians here. A whole ton of which I'm sure, probably half, have been hired in the last 2 years, maybe. So love to hear if you think we're keeping the cultural barrier. It's always one of the things we hear after Summit in the feedback is, man, every single Atlassian I met was kind of awesome. Can I have a job? Which is awesome. We have plenty available. And that wasn't meant to be a job plug, I swear. But that if we're keeping that standard high, and again, that's a good barometer for us after Summit, that people keep saying that every year, then that's probably a year well done for us.
So how many we're adding this year? We're adding 500 to 700 people to Atlassian over the next 12
Something
months.
like that, yeah.
So it's pretty big hiring goals.
What role do you guys still play in the recruitment process? Where do you guys fill in?
I do a lot of interviewing. I think we both do. It's been a long time since we interviewed every single person, but we play certainly a role in interviewing senior roles, big roles, important roles. We do a lot of work hiring. In our different functional areas, I guess we do probably a slightly deeper hiring search. And then when people come on board, we each have sort of classes in our boot camp that we run on how to think like the CEO, on Atlassian values, that sort of thing. So we try to spend as much time with new starters as possible, which is scalable use of our time.
And your company was also really famous kind of in the early days for the very tight-knit community and the fact that a lot of early employees were friends and friends of friends, and that type of community that was kind of built up that was very, very close. And even to this day, I heard that you guys still kind of have open office hours. So now that you're a company with hundreds and hundreds of people around the world with several offices, I imagine it must be very hard to kind of maintain that closeness in the community. Is that something that you've kind of just let go, and that's something you can't do when you're, say when you become a 5,000 person team, or is it something that you guys still kind of actively have to fight for?
I think it's when you grow, it's really difficult because you go from knowing every person, intimately, everything they like and don't like and want to do in life, to people, where you know their name, and now you get to the stage where you meet someone in the hallway and it's like, oh, we haven't met before, and I've been here for 6 months. Okay, wow, we're getting to that size and scale. I think that all the things we used to do when we met people one-on-one, like, in terms of people warming to you as a leader, still happen. It just happens at a much greater distance. Mm-hmm. I met, even, all the cultural things that we do at Atlassian seem to resonate through people we'd never met before. I was out the other night with some staff, and one of our sort of people in the accounting team was there, and it turns out he's the one where my expenses get processed through at some stage. And he said that, you probably don't know this, but Mike and you stay at, like in the cheapest hotel rooms out of every person at the company. And I thought, okay, I should probably stay at some nicer hotel rooms. But just those stories, I think, resonate with people. Yeah. Like, so it's people watch intently your actions as to what you do, what you say, how you spend your time. Like, you're under a microscope the entire time, even if you don't know the people that are studying you.
Yeah, and that's actually funny that you brought it up, because you guys are pretty frugal, right? You always fly economy, if that's correct.
Yep.
And you have all these habits that, are kind of surprising. Even in the world of startups and whatnot, you hear about a lot of executives who fly well, they stay in nice hotels, there's lots of perks at companies, but you seem to have really chosen kind of a different direction, whether that's how, you decide to make your decisions as travel, or even the perks at the company. Is that something that was like a very conscious decision?
I think you want to put the money into the right things. I mean, I know it's probably going to come up, but we're actually sharing a hotel room at Summit, right?
But now
which everyone finds weird, but I'm like, well, like, we're going to go sleep and go home. I mean, it's not like anything's going to happen. I mean, it's not like we haven't shared. I didn't mean it like that. Well. Come on, steady on.
Not going to go well.
Beers are after this. I just mean, over 10 years, we've shared so many hotel rooms that it's like, it's natural for us.
Go on.
It's going very badly. But, I think about it. I mean, we save $500, something like that, on not having 2 hotel rooms, $300. And, if we keep doing them, we add it up and we put that back into other things. Again, what we put it back into is equally important as where we save it, I think, right? It's the same thing with, if you look at our offices, we tend to invest a lot more money in staff space than, reception spaces, etc. So as a customer, if you've been to the office and think, well, the reception's kind of, could have been much nicer. If you go to the staff spaces, that's where the majority of the time is spent. Like, we would rather spend money on that than anything else. So it's the same thing. If we save, hundreds of dollars on hotel rooms and we put it into R&D, it's a much better use of time and money. But
you realize you now have a lot of revenue, like a significant amount.
Sure.
And you could afford to, spend a little bit more here and there, but it seems like it's with this kind of ruthless pragmatism, sort of.
I like that term, ruthless pragmatism. Yeah, I'll use that. I like that. Yeah, go with that. That's a good term.
So if all the things have changed, what are the things that you both believe can fundamentally not change, whether that's values or the way you do things?
For me, it's the values. I mean, we have 5 Atlassian values that are reasonably famous, and like, we want to build a company that's going to be around in a long time, and 50 years is kind of the number we use. And I won't be here in 50 years, or I'll be in a rocking chair or something. The products will be completely different. We'll have some holographic something that people can't even imagine now.
It'll be in a watch.
It'll be in a watch.
Right now.
You're in a watch.
That's right. You're on the watch.
Holographic watch. Like, it'll solve things for you. And build different buildings and everything. So the only thing that's going to last between now and 50 years' time is our culture and our values. And so that's why we spend so much time on our values. And one of them is be the change you seek. Because as you get larger as a company, everyone feels that they can't make an impact. You're all incredibly smart people. I remember sitting down a while ago with some of my friends and really incredibly smart people, and they were all frustrated at their jobs, and they were frustrated because they couldn't make an impact. They had all these great ideas, but they couldn't make a change. And so we came up with the value, be the change you seek, so that every employee is expected to make an impact on Atlassian. So for me, it's the values that don't change. And hopefully in 50 years' time, we're still an amazing place to work where people can come and do the best work of their lives. That's kind of our vision for what the company could be.
I think it's also solving big problems. So like our sort of mission of unleashing the potential of every team is a pretty big, it's not something we're going to solve next year. And it's not something that's probably ever going to be solved, but we can get a little better at it every year. So it feels good that if you're building a long-term company and you're targeting like a big problem, people in 20 years' time are still going to be building some form of software. Maybe they're super productive because they can spit out tons and tons and tons of effectively lines of code, if you even have those, like with one engineer, and they can be way more productive, but they're still going to be they're still going to have to track issues, they're still going to have problems, projects to manage. So, these are big problems. Still going to want to communicate with each other. They're not going away.
Which one would you say is the most important? The one you guys are most famous for is the don't F the customer. I can't say a curse word because I'm a Wall Street Journal employee, but I believe that is the one that's the most famous.
Which one is it again?
Don't F the customer.
DFTC
Yes.
gets shortened on T-shirts.
DFTC. Is that still number one, or
I think that well, we get asked this question a lot. I don't think there is a number one on purpose. Like they're designed.
They're all your favorite.
Again, the values are sort of designed to be. No, they're designed to be orthogonal and axiomatic, right? They're designed to pull you in different directions when you're making a decision. So it's hard to satisfy all five simultaneously, and that's what gets people thinking when they're having to make decisions on a daily basis, which is, where it's quite interesting. So in different cases, some come to the fore more than others, but I don't think there's, one that's, stands out. I think there are some that don't get talked about enough, and there are others that get talked about all the time.
Now, one of the things I really enjoy about covering a company, I've known you guys for now, I believe 4 years, is that you seem to both genuinely like each other.
Oh, that is a good
like of
show
all,
we put on, yeah.
there's, no, but seriously, of all the executives I know in the executive teams, it's rare, first of all, to see co-CEOs, but to see a marriage, and it really feels like a marriage, that is functional, is quite extraordinary. Maybe it's because I live in the US, the land where 1 out of 2 couples get divorced. But, you guys, there's no passive aggressive, there's no weirdness. Every time I see you, you seem to be genuine friends. I don't know if is that accurate?
Sure, yeah.
Well, you share lots of hotel rooms, right?
Share lots of hotel rooms, got very used to it. It's 12-year, 13-year journey. You'd be pretty hard if you weren't good friends.
Yeah.
If you weren't good friends after 13 years, let alone at the start. So
it's really hard to divorce each other at the moment.
Complicated divorce.
Who would take the kids? Who would get the kids?
You'd have to draw up the company and split it down the middle. But what is the secret to this marriage? Every long-lasting couple gets that question. It's the idea of what makes it work for you guys, especially when you're in different offices, you're traveling so much.
Yeah, I don't know what makes it work for Mike, but for me, it's that we have complementary skills, right? So Mike is incredibly good at things that I am pretty terrible at. I'd like to think the reverse is true, and so because of that, you can achieve together things you could never achieve separately, right? So with this partnership, again, we can build Atlassian, build this amazing company with all of you come to see a conference with 1,000 staff. Neither of us could have done that by ourselves, and so I guess when you can create something special together, that's a great bond.
So how do you guys differ? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How does he complement that?
I think if our wives knew we were giving relationship advice on marriage, they'd be laughing very hard when they see this. I'm sure they will. I always use the example that we don't overlap 100%. I think if you overlap 100%, then you might as well be the same person and you probably don't need 2 people. And if you overlap 0%, we would fight way too much because we'd be on different parts of any decision. So we have quite a lot of overlapping skills. We've both run the company entirely at different stages when been off on honeymoon or various long breaks or whatever. we sometimes get pictured a bit more, I'm the accelerator guy and Scott's the brake guy, but I think that's very unfair. It's maybe more I'm accelerator and he's steering, and anyone without the other is probably not going to get you very far. So, I tend to be more on you look at who reports to us, right? Product and marketing side, and Scott's a bit more on the operational and engineering side. I would always do the front-end code and he would do the back-end code, I guess. It's sort of the way it worked out.
We do have a
generalization.
When the employees go back, we do this thing called founder code, now that you've talked about it. So founder code, I don't know if anyone's been in a startup, it's the code you wrote like when you were still eating ramen noodles and, when you were 20 and you didn't actually know how to program. And all my employees, complain about founder code, I've got to clean it up, it's a pain in the ass. I'm like, well, if there was no founder code, there'd be no Atlassian, so stop complaining. But they do, then they run all these numbers, and so it turns out that Mike has written more lines of code across all of Atlassian than I have. But my lines of code have lasted longer in the product than Mike's have. So we each have a claim to fame.
What is the quality that you guys would like to have? Like, where do you see that, he does this well, that's something I'd like to do well?
That's a good question.
Well, Mike is really exceptionally good. You'll see from the keynote tomorrow, Mike is an exceptionally good communicator with, graphics and pictures, and there's things like the design, like I'm always in awe of people that can do design, because I always go, all right, I read these design guidelines and I'll move stuff around and technically it should be right, but it looks like crap. So Mike just has the innate ability to do that, and also to dream of a future and dream big. And I think that's the most important thing in a CEO, is to have this incredible vision for the future, because without a vision, no one's going to follow you. And I think Mike is an incredible person to be able to dream. Whenever you go to Mike with an idea, he's like, that's really good. But if it was 10 times as big, it'll be even better. And so I think, having someone like that is really important at the head of a company.
Now you have to say something nice, Mike.
I was going to say, I just need like a robot that's just going to say, make it bigger. I think, there'd be a few things. Certainly, I'm not as good as Scott is on following up on promises. And it's hard because people are like, can you do this? You're like, yeah, I'll do that. And then I go to him and he's like, here's these 40 things I agreed to do today, and here's what I've done about every single one and all this. And I'm like, man, I'm not even sure which 40 things I agreed to do today. And I'm trying to get better at, attention to detail and follow-up and that sort of thing. But it's really hard, and it's vital because, again, if it was just me, we would have driven off the road long ago. There's no doubt about that. So, there's a steadying influence on that. And there's again, the pragmatism and the logic is just impeccable. Like, you come with a decision, I think we should do this, and Scott will take it apart with a series of questions, and then you're like, no, actually, I was completely wrong, we should go that way. And he's kind of, it's almost like a little McKinseyan analysis of every decision that goes through in this beautiful way, and it's a pretty logic tree that ends up, right? It's a series of questions that's really good. He's way better at asking questions than I am to interrogate, get to the nub of the issue, and you end up leaving and going, yep, I don't know why I thought we should go right, we're definitely going left.
Have you guys ever really pissed each other off? Had to be, come on.
We get this. I can't think of a time when we've really gotten upset about anything. There's been lots of minor cases, but nothing, I wouldn't say anything major.
Are there at least
huge.
Little quirks that he does, little pet peeves of yours?
Man,
in any marriage.
The 10th time he asks why, you're like, it's like, the why again? Why deeper? And you're like, I'm just not in the mood for 20 questions right now. Yeah, I'd say that. Lots of questions. It's the strength and weakness problem, right? It's all part of the same thing. Sometimes you're just like, dude, I don't have any time for any questions.
And what about you?
This could go on for a long time, I think.
This is good. It's like the Newlyweds game. Right.
What's the Newlyweds game?
Well, it's just like you guys would be isolated and giving us responses. I'd ask one question and then see if your responses match up. But anyway,
that sounds interesting.
We should do that. That'll be for next year. But yeah, what about you? Is there anything that ticks you off?
Just where to start, right? Like, it's a huge list. If I had to pick something, again, Mike's incredibly good at, at painting a big picture on stuff. It's just making sure we get there on some of the big thing before he discovers the next big thing that we should do tomorrow. So probably just having to focus on something.
No.
You don't like my email storms. I'm not very good at doing email on a regular basis, but I'll get on a plane and then fire out, clear my inbox of hundreds and hundreds of emails, and you can tell when I land because it goes, and then it's really quiet for a few days, and then it all comes back. It's not a very efficient way. Don't copy that. It's not very good.
That email from 4 months ago.
That's
where
right.
we had
4
to make
months
that
ago,
decision.
like following up on something. So.
When it came to the moment of deciding about venture capital, your company's obviously very famous for not taking any venture capital, no direct. I mean, obviously you guys have sold some shares, allowed employees to sell shares, but not any of the company's shares. And that's not how most startups are done these days, especially here where capital is pretty plentiful. So did you guys, sit down and kind of have to think through that? Was it something that you guys even disagreed on?
I don't think it's something we ever disagreed on. Again, it's a good example of ruthless pragmatism. I mean, at the start, we had no chance, right? You're on the wrong side of the world. In 2002, which was kind of nuclear winter for tech, we didn't know any VCs. They wouldn't have probably given two 21-year-old kids any money anyway, so we didn't even bother, right? And so we built a business that made $5 and cost $4, and then we put the dollar back into R&D, and we made $9 and cost $8 and kept going. And at some point, we could have gone and gotten it, but at all points it was like, well, we don't need it. Let's think about that next year. And, we kind of never got to the point of needing it, I guess, right? I don't think it was a logical decision that we wouldn't get it. It was at the start we had no choice, and therefore, there was no point along the way where we needed it. We didn't have to build factories or anything large in terms of capital investment either, right?
Remember that we chatted it, we'd been running the business for, 7 or 8 years at that stage. And we said, well, what do we want to do? We want to sell out, go do something else. I think we're almost hitting 30, so we have that whatever midlife crisis you have at the age of 30. And we said, we really want to double down and kind of do this for another 10 years. And we thought, well, okay, how do we best set up a business to run for the next 10 years? And it was to get some advisors and get some people that would be in our corner. And so, when we took some money from Excel, Mike and I took some money off the table, so did some other people. But it was really to bring on Excel as a partner who could help us grow the business. And since then, they've helped us build out an amazing board of directors, bring in an incredible management team. So we're really set up to grow as a company. We just hit a $250 million run rate in terms of revenue, and my lawyers in the audience, I'm sure we're close to that, give or take a little bit. When Excel invested, we were 60 million. So we've grown a huge amount over the last 4 years with their help.
It was interesting. I mean, they sometimes tell the story of the Excel events, but we were the one company that was negotiating them in reverse. So they wanted to give us like $100 million, and we were like, can we take 5? And because I think my shares are worth a lot, and I'm not sure you're paying enough for them, whatever you're paying for them. And they were like, well, no, and so we were actually going, whereas most companies are like, want more and more and more capital, right,
Sure.
at that time. And so they tell that story of the Excel events that we're the ones that went backwards, and they were really confused.
And we had a bake-off. We had 5 or 6 VCs where we said, okay, here's our term sheet. You come back and tell us what valuation we get. And through that process, there was actually a great story where we have, don't fuck the customer. I can say it. We're Australian. It's kind of a part of our charm. You have DFTC and don't fuck the customer. And the Excel guys came down and they brought down T-shirts as DFPC, and we're like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. Why, And they explained that it was there that says, don't fuck the portfolio company. And that was their way of kind of, showing that they really got Atlassian's values. And that's what sold us on the Excel.
Yeah, whoever came up with that was probably like really psyched when they did it. So like, yes, this is a good one.
There's all these partners printing T-shirts. They loved it.
You guys just run your business very differently. And that has been this recurring theme, obviously, throughout this conversation. And you mentioned Bezos before. I was curious of whether they're in Silicon Valley or outside, if there's any interesting entrepreneurs, CEOs, partnerships that you kind of look up to in navigating the business.
Mike's a huge student of tech. You were reading tech books when you're
I think we read a lot. I wouldn't say there's any individuals on a direct basis that we spend a ton of time with. Nowadays we're blessed with like an awesome board, so we kind of have all these inbuilt mentors, which we've been able to build one by one, and almost every person we get on board is like, I can't believe he'll actually join us. Well, we'll try to see if that happens, and then, whoa. Certainly, I'm a huge fan of Amazon. I think that notion of a long-term vision is very, very rare in tech and solving big problems over a long period of time. Obviously Apple builds amazing products and has, lots of strengths, some weaknesses maybe, but I think you can draw things from all successful tech companies. Big fans of Intuit. That's a great example. There's very few tech companies that have been around for multiple decades, and certainly when you get to 3 decades or more, you fall to a very, very, very small number. And I feel like Intuit never gets enough credit for surviving the Microsoft in the 80s and getting through the 90s and moving to the cloud. And like, if you think of all the transitions they've been through, you could probably count on one hand the number of companies that have made it through that many transitions, and it's still a strong, functioning, innovating, interesting company. So, we watch what they do pretty carefully as well.
He just stole my good examples.
Or did I? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
You said you read a lot, though. What are the books that you read? Business books or things that influence you?
You read kids' books these days, don't you?
I read a lot of kids' books nowadays. I don't know. I mean, I can't think of anything particular that I've read recently. I think we just read a lot of things. I find business books, it's really bad, but you can often read the first chapter and then you can, the rest is just 200 pages of explanation of what's in the first 30 pages. So now I'm a bit more time poor. I tend to read the first 30 pages, and if it's interesting enough, maybe I'll keep going. Read a lot of online tech blogs and stuff all the time. I think everyone does. Big on feed reading. Spend a lot of time on planes with Reader and your phone, and it's got thousands of articles, and you can sit there for hours on end.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, I'm just thinking back to this Bezos anecdote about how he kind of outlined what the next 20 years of Amazon would be. And, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience be interested if you guys were to create a similar napkin today. Maybe you weren't ready when you first started the business, but if you were doing it today, what would be on that roadmap, or on that enough to fit a napkin?
Yeah, for us, it's all about helping teams collaborate. As Mike mentioned earlier, that problem is never going away. It's always going to be a struggle to collaborate, whether it's the person next to you or someone on the other side of the globe. Increasingly, that happens. I explained to people doing school or university, and I asked them how much they enjoy group assignments. And as you can imagine, when you have kids, or you remember back, when you were that age, everyone hates group assignments. It's the worst thing at university. The only thing you have to do right in a group assignment is to find the smartest person in the class and convince them that you'll be on their team. And when I speak to university students and I tell them that life is one big group assignment, for the rest of your life, all you will do is group assignments. And you should see the horror on these kids' faces when you explain that to them. I guess our job is to make those group assignments, make collaborating with your teams, a fun thing to do, make it more productive, get rid of all the crap work and the back and forth and the busy work and the duplication and all the things that happen when you don't have a team on the same page, singing from the same hymn book. And when I talk to customers, sometimes you get down, you think, what are we really achieving as much as we should? And then I've talked to customers that don't use our products. My wife's in the financial services industry, and I say, how do you collaborate? And she's like, we email back and forth, but then I got dropped off this one email chain that then went for another 2 weeks, and I didn't find out about it till after it was too late. And I was like, oh my God, people are still, operating that old mode of collaboration where things get lost, or it's political or not transparent. And I think, okay, we have a huge opportunity, to get everyone in the company on the same page. And if the whole company can operate as one team, then we're going to be, we're going to do amazing things, right? We're going to help, whether it's Tesla build cars, they're a huge Atlassian customer. They build software for everything. Whether it's Twitter, use it for the entire company, or, I know there's at least 2 people mapping the human genome who use Atlassian's products through the entire thing, including putting genomic information inside Jira. So I think the opportunity for us to kind of help people work as one team and collaborate as one team is just enormous. I think that's the next 10, 20 years for us.
The university examples are good. That's actually also how we started Atlassian. I found the smartest guy I knew and was like, he's probably going to do all right. I'm going to hitch my wagon to that.
So that was your whole game plan.
That's right. That's my game plan. It's one big group assignment, this whole company. It's a 1,000-person group now. It's very chaotic if we didn't have HipChat.
I'm curious, beyond obviously your own products, what you guys use to collaborate with each other, with the company on a day-to-day basis, the top apps that you use on your phone, whether it's an Android or an Apple. What do you guys do? What are your habits?
It's a good question. Not a lot of Android users on our executive team. A handful that get mercilessly made fun of, unfortunately. What do I use on a daily? I use Uber on a daily basis. It's probably one of those apps that's changed. You wouldn't think about it. A few years ago, if you told me that I'd pay so much money for a cab, a couple of bucks extra, and it'd be in I'd be like, oh, really? And then you use it and you're like, fuck. It's just really good, right? It's just a great application of mobile. Everything arrived at the same time. That's definitely on my front screen of my phone, I guess. What other apps do we use to collaborate? Very few.
Yeah,
Gmail?
Our own ones, yeah, mostly. For
Which one?
collaboration, mostly our own products.
Yeah.
HipChat's huge for us, and I know it still has huge amounts of usage, but across this customer base here in the audience, it's still relatively small penetration. Like most people in the audience aren't using HipChat today, and that's one of those applications that is really hard to explain to people how it makes a difference until you're using it. And once your whole company uses it, it's really hard to imagine going back. And there's plenty of companies out there that maybe don't have some sort of real-time collaboration system, or it's some sort of IRC-based thing, and you look at the workflows that we do internally, so we have an M-team chat room, which is our management team, and we put all sorts of things in there. If something's going, Mike just sent a message to the M-team room about 20 minutes before we came on stage saying, hey, Summit's going to be awesome, and that goes out to people's mobiles and desktops around the world. And that's just changed the way the company works. No one of us has a phone. We all use HipChat video. If you want to find someone for a meeting, you HipChat them, and it'll turn up on their mobile phone. If they're walking between meetings, you'll know can they get there or not. It's a rich experience. So we use it all the time to drag in images and other things, so we can collaborate around content. So for us, I think HipChat is the sort of maybe undersold gem of Atlassian that people aren't yet using, and that if you look at it, that's what we use every single day to collaborate.
Great. So in a year, when you guys come back here, what do you think will have changed?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a good question. Hopefully a whole lot of things that we're working on that haven't been finished by Summit will be finished.
Well, there's a whole lot of things
some new products.
we've got that we haven't announced that'll be coming out over the next year. So that's exciting.
In what verticals, or what can you tease us with?
More evolution of the current product set. There's some extensions as well, but for us, it's largely doing the things we do at the moment really well and do them more. I remember Jeff Bezos, you mentioned before, he said that too many people focus on what's going to change, right? So they're always focused on the next fad and the next fad. And he said the interesting thing is to focus on the things that don't change. And for him, it's in retail, no one's going to want to get their packages later. No one's going to want to pay more for stuff, right? Everyone's going to want lower price, better service, better delivery. All those things are constant. And for us, the collaboration problem is never going to change. In terms of it's helping people collaborate is a fundamental thing. So we're always focused on that. We don't have too many sort of frivolous side projects. It's all really about helping customers to collaborate.
Great. Well, thanks, guys. We're going to open it up to the questions that you all have been submitting and voting up. Just one more question. So the IPO, that's next time this year?
The IPO?
Yeah, IPO, yeah. Next year?
Are we allowed to talk about it? No.
I had to ask, by the way. My editors would have killed me if I didn't, but...
No, so we talked about Atlassian, about going public, and it's funny, coming from Australia, going public is not sort of this, well, people put it this way, people over here sometimes think going public is a destination. Hey, I worked my entire life to, take a company public, and you go, okay, and then what? Well, I just worked my entire life to take a company public, and you go, okay, but that's a stepping stone to building a great company. And so for us, we believe, we've brought a board out, we want to go from the Scott and Mike show to, a public company with, investors around the world, and that's part of our journey, but when that happens is really up to us. When are we ready, when's the right time for that particular milestone?
Great. Okay, so...
I'm scared about what you've got.
But
while you get the questions up, there's actually the second row who've been waiting for me to call them out here. There's some, I don't know what's happening outside, but there is a Mike and Scott photo on every person's head.
That's amazing.
At the front here. There's been kind of freaking me out for the whole audience. I don't know if you guys want to stand up and turn around. I don't know if we can bring up the house lights so these guys can, if that's easy to bring up. But can we give them a round of applause here? Because they've been wearing them on their face the entire time.
I'm not sure. Do you want to encourage this sort of behaviour? Next year we have 2,000
Next year we have 2,000 people. We'll be handing them out the door, yeah.
Scott, your
face. If I need a body double, I'll just call you guys and you can stand in for me.
Your face almost looks like Zuckerberg's face for some reason on that.
I'm not sure if that's good for him or me.
All right. Actually, the first question looks like got about 70 upvotes here. Some of the top 10 most voted issues in Jira Confluence have been around for more than 10 years. As a user, what can I do to help you understand how vital these feature request improvements are to my company? Can't avoid that question. That's the top one.
You can answer
Love
that one.
this
You probably
question.
created all those bugs, mate.
Ooh, tough one. Yeah, look, I mean, this is something we get asked all the time. I mean, to be fair, my standard answer is more of an exploratory one to help you guys understand rather than actually answering the question, because it's very hard to answer. I mean, fundamentally, the first thing I always say is, find me another company where you even know what the top 10 feature requests that have been open for 10 years. Try to do that, Microsoft, IBM, anybody else. You can't, there's no such thing as Jack or Jira.Atlassian.com in those companies. So A, it's a huge advantage that people can even know that that's been open for 10 years, which a lot of other companies you can't. Second, there's always a top 10 most highly voted unclosed issues. There will always be. That's one of those Bezosian long-term things. Every time we take 3 or 4 things off that list, magically 3 or 4 things that were 13, 14, and 15 become 7, 8, 9. So that's, that's a constantly difficult thing. Other than that, I mean, add your comments, give us use cases, keep trying to explain them. Make sure to grab as many product managers as you can while they're here. They probably have the most influence over roadmaps. And other than that, we keep trying to knock off as more every year. I mean, I know the Confluence guys will tell you they solve more votes in 5.6 than they ever have in any release previously, and that keeps going. As we have more engineers, we can solve more stuff, but we have tens of thousands of customers, and it's really hard. We wish we could do everything, but we can't. I mean,
for those
there will always be a top 10. We do look at the votes quite a lot, and we now look even smarter at who's voting. So we look at different segments of customers and make sure that we're doing as much stuff for enterprise as we are for the mid-market, as we are for small businesses, and not just get dominated by one group. We do look, by the way, if all your colleagues vote for it as well. That is not usually a very good mechanism, although people try that. You sometimes look at one issue that has 45 votes, and there's like 2 domain names and like 40 people from one domain. You're like, hang on a second.
That's great. I like this question, actually. What is the coolest thing you thought about to develop but has never gone into fruition because people don't think it's a good idea?
Ooh. Are you thinking? You're taking that one? I would say I've always wanted a new, probably everybody in tech. Email clients just generally suck. I don't know why it's so hard. We've never tried to build one in anger. The only one I ever tried to build was and probably only works for me, was a Kanban-based email system. So it literally would hide your inbox from you and only show you 5 unread items, 5 read items, and 5 starred items. So when you got the 15 emails you had, you'd have to either remove a starred one and then you get one more unread one, right? And I always thought that would be super, because the problem is my inbox starts from the newest thing, and I'm like, that's crazy, it's backwards. It should be the oldest, most important thing. Right, and that's how we do software development and Kanban-based processes. Like, why don't we have that in a personal inbox where it literally will not show me anymore? It's like you want some new, pull to refresh, not going to give you anything until you deal with one of these 15 would be, I don't know.
That would prevent those email barrages I get then.
It would. And you'd have to focus on those. You can't, it comes in latest in the inbox. All inboxes are stacked backwards, if you ask me.
And so why haven't you tackled that problem?
I feel like it's a bit like, isn't it when text editors do email, it's fully eaten itself or something? As soon as we release an email client, it'll do the same thing. I don't know. We need another 1,000 engineers to maybe get the email.
It's a stupid idea. That's why we haven't done it.
I'd pay a lot of money for it. If someone wants to build it for me as a Gmail extension, Chrome extension, something, anything.
Another question is, how do you see software development changing in the next decade?
I'll take that one. If you chat with our head of development tools, who spends a lot of time on this, the thing that we're finding is that there are more and more people involved in software development. It's just not traditionally the software development you might kind of be used to years and years ago. Not long ago, in the 70s and 60s, you had to have a long beard and you had to write assembly code, and it was really difficult to effectively write programs. And these days, though people were lamenting that you don't write programs anymore, you use your iPads and so forth. More and more people are programming with JavaScript or building simple apps to do things. So I think there'll be more and more people using kind of or building programs, but they won't be called programs anymore. They'll be what's that one where you build Lego worlds? Minecraft. There's 7-year-olds building incredible Minecraft worlds that you wouldn't call programming, but effectively that's what they're doing. So you'll see more and more people doing program. That I have to have another term for it, but there's not programming, building stuff together, and then the development tools I use will be completely different.
I like this question a lot here. It's looking back over the history of Atlassian. If there's one decision you could change, what would it be and why?
I think that we would release we have a $10 use of our software for $10, and we did that about 5 years ago, and I think we would have done it earlier. The thing that we've realized now is that the market for our products is huge. It's just incredibly huge, and if there's consumer companies like Facebook and Google who think about the next 4 billion people who aren't connected to the internet. They're putting balloons up, I think, in case of Google, and they're doing drones in the case of Facebook, just to be different. And their aim is to bring internet access to the 4 billion people who aren't connected today. And I look at that and think, well, who's becoming the enterprise software company? Like, who's going to help the businesses that are getting online, and how are they going to collaborate once they're online using the internet? How do we help them? And I think that market is so large that we should do a better job of giving our stuff away earlier. We should have given our stuff away free at the low end, made it much cheaper for small businesses to get started. I probably would have made that decision 5 years earlier.
Also, you guys are both technical founders. Do you still find time to write code? Even if yours gets deleted, Mike.
It's very funny. Every time Scott commits something to Jira, I think the little alarm bells go off and some sort of stash plugin is like flashing at people saying, warning, warning, warning.
There's an entire guy in Jira whose entire job
someone whose job
is
to do that.
watch in case I commit some code.
So now it's automated issue transitions. They've solved that with robots. We do sometimes, less often than.
What types of things will you work on?
I mean, on a regular basis, I think we probably do a lot more at the sort of design and functionality level. We're pretty wicked with Keynote. We're pretty good at drawing Keynote prototypes. I mean, we try to participate in Ship It. Again, it's our sort of quarterly innovation exercise for all of engineering and beyond. And I think it's important to stay in touch, so we try to do that. I've built a lot of Connect add-ons over the last year and a half as Connect has kept maturing, because I think it's important for us to at least understand the developer experience, because we're trying to build it and trying to improve it, and if we don't understand it, that's quite hard.
Do you want to explain Connect for those in the audience?
Sorry, Connect is the cloud-based extension framework we had, so we've always had a really good plugin extensibility framework behind the firewall in Java, and Connect allows you to write it with a series of less connected or more loosely connected services. In a sort of much more modern way, but obviously the development of that into our applications has been quite challenging and quite different for us. So we try to play with new things, but I don't think we have commit access to mainline branches anymore. That's not allowed. Probably a good idea.
And I think we have time for one more question here. Of course, it wouldn't be Silicon Valley without this question, but what advice would you give to young founders just getting started, many who are probably in the audience, like yourselves 12 years ago? So yeah, the question is, what advice would you have if you were just starting out?
For me, it's do something you're absolutely passionate about, because failing everything else, no matter how good you are, if there's someone else out there who's more passionate about it, they will do a better job. And if you don't do something you're passionate about, you're not going to do a great job either, and you're going to fail. So find something that you wake up every morning and do that you're passionate about. And if you look at Atlassian, we actually started off as a support company. We started off supporting a small company out of Sweden, doing third-party support, which is a terrible business model for a whole bunch of reasons. And we were lucky that it failed, because if it had been marginally successful, we might still be doing it today. And when we sort of failed, we said, well, what is it that we really love doing? Like, what are we passionate about? And we're passionate about building products, kind of building products that you go, wow, we created something today that didn't exist before. And I think that passion comes through in the products that we build. The way you use them, the small little touches that we do, that you couldn't really describe to someone, but they come through because people who care about it are building the products. So my advice would be do something you're absolutely passionate about.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people it's a journey. It's cliched, but it's a journey. It's not a destination. I find like so many people, whether that's, it's the same thing about doing something you're passionate about, right? You find a lot of people go, oh, it's a $100 million idea, and you're like, but is it a good idea? Like, hang on, does the world need this? Like, are you changing something, or are you just trying to make money? There's probably lots of other ways to make money. And I get asked that all the time, when people saying, well, you guys have made a lot of money. Why don't you go sit on a beach? And it's like, we didn't start this to sit on a beach. Hang on a second. Like, I enjoy what I do every day. Why would I not want to keep doing this? And I think for a lot of the founders, if you don't enjoy it, it's a really tough journey at a lot of points. And if they don't enjoy what they do every day, and I probably extend this to anybody in any job, maybe do something else. Like, life is too short. And a lot of these founders, we spend a lot of time with Australian founders in, seed funds and VC funds and stuff that we're involved with in Sydney. And a lot of people get into, text word out, I'm going to go start a business. And you're like, why? Find a problem to go solve. Don't start a business for the sake of starting a business, right? And people sort of miss that. So if you don't enjoy the journey, even if it fails, you do a startup for 3 years and it's a total failure, you will learn way more than you will in an MBA in that 3 years. But make sure that you're doing it to enjoy the learnings along the way, not for whatever destination comes. And people get that backwards all the time. Maybe not in Silicon Valley. They do in Australia.
Well, thank you so much. Once again, Mike and Scott, co-founders, co-CEOs of Atlassian, and have an amazing conference.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.